Hi, I'm Nick, and welcome to Storytime. Today we're covering the famous run of Green Lantern Green Arrow known as Hard Traveling Heroes. It was 1976, and superhero comics were going to tackle social issues and real-world problems for the first time in a major way. These are important comics, but they are nearly 50 years old, so expect to see some outdated depictions of certain racial groups, most notably in this part Native Americans, who will on the page be referred to as Indians, and there will appear some slurs. In the interest of history, I will not censor anything. Two more parts will follow this first one, each covering about 6 issues. Let's begin. For years he has been a proud man. He has worn the power ring of the Guardians, and used it well, and never doubted the righteousness of his cause. In the next dozen seconds, an event will occur which will signal the end of his grandeur, and the beginning of a long torment. There will be no happy ending, for this is not a happy tale, nor a simple one. But what you are about to witness is, perhaps, inevitable. His name, of course, is Green Lantern, and often he has vowed that no evil shall escape my sight. He has been fooling himself. It begins with Green Lantern paying a visit to his friend Green Arrow when he happens upon a scuffle. He sees a young man push down an old fat man in a suit, and instantly acts to protect the man being attacked. He lifts the young man in a green top, spinning him around before sending him straight to the police headquarters. He intends to follow and press charges, accepting the old man's thanks, when he is hailed and a can is thrown at his head. He forms a green umbrella to protect them from the rain of debris from every window. He's about to step into action again when a familiar voice stops him. Hal is shocked that Green Arrow is defending these anarchists. Ollie tells Hal that he has no business here. He was tempted to throw a can himself. Hal is confused, so Ollie invites him in for a tour of the building. He introduces Hal to the grandmother of the boy he just sent to jail, her only means of support. He dropped out of school to get a job because she had no one else. Hal says that he was breaking the law, and Ollie says sure he was, but he lost his temper because of the injustice with the slumlord he was roughing up, who hasn't spent a cent on repairs in years, and now he's planning to evict all the poor people. He can make more money with a parking lot. Hal says that he was only doing his job, and Ollie says that he's heard that line before at the Nuremberg trials. Their argument is interrupted by an old man with a question for Green Lantern that will change his life forever. He tells Green Lantern that he's read about him, how he works for the Blueskins, how on a planet someplace he helped out the Orange Skins, and he done considerable for the Purple Skins. Only their skins he never bothered with. He asks Green Lantern, how come he never did anything to help out the Black Skins? Hal has no answer. After some soul-searching, Hal realizes how myopic his view of justice has been. He asks the man what he should do to help. The man says that he's no advice department, but if he wants to badly enough, he'll find a way. But he believes Hal's desire to help is sincere. Ollie suggests he try to stop the people from getting kicked out of their building, and Hal decides to talk to the landlord first. He still believes in the system, and he will try to find a legal way to help the people. As he recites his oath, he notes that until today, he had always believed that no evil escaped his sight. He nears the landlord's penthouse. Hal argues with the landlord Jubal Slade for over an hour, but is unable to convince him to be moral instead of greedy. Jubal gets bored and orders his men to throw Hal out, and he's about to respond with force, but the Guardians interrupt him, summoning him instantly to Oa. The Guardians warn Hal the humans he was attacking committed no crime. His orders as Green Lantern are only to enforce order, not to act in a moral fashion, and this will become a point of contention for most of Hal's life and career, beginning here and now. They forgive his insubordination and send him to cool off by diverting a swarm of meteors. Hal does as he's told, but eventually questions his order to remain there until summoned. He has unfinished business back on Earth. Hal weighs two events in his mind, the words given to him by the Guardians and by the Black Man earlier, and he chooses his own morality over his assigned duty. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Green Arrow is visiting Jubal Slade, trying a different tactic. He attempts to extort money from the man, threatening the safety of his men. Ollie fires 4 arrows faster than sight can follow, so the 4 twangs sound as one, and Jubal is pinned by his clothes to the wall. Sufficiently frightened, he asks to meet Arrow later with the cash. Ollie gives him the address of an abandoned store and leaves. At midnight, true to form, Jubal has sent a team of enforcers to kill Green Arrow, just as he expected. They fire into a dummy in the store. Ollie hooks a thug's neck with his bow and throws the man over his head into a wall. He draws and fires a shaft into the barrel of the other man's gun, and punches him out as he stares at it, dumbstruck. Unfortunately, one of the stray bullets hit Ollie's tape recorder, ruining his plan. Hal tried his humanity and Ollie tried his greed, and they both failed. Hal has an idea, though, as Slade is unaware that his men have failed and been captured. Hal speeds over Star City with Ollie and a man in a suit in tow on a glowing green couch. Using his ring to disguise himself, Hal enters Slade's office and pretends to be the hitman. He gets Slade to admit what he ordered and then reveals himself. The man in the suit is the district attorney, though, and he heard everything from the next room. Slade makes a desperate move, triggering a live hand grenade on his desk. Hal shoots a beam of light from his ring. It forms a giant hand, which flicks the grenade through the window where it explodes safely. He places Slade in a giant mousetrap for his trip to the police station. Epilogue. The Guardians appear to admonish Hal for his further insubordination. Ollie steps in, accusing Hal of not being a hero or a man, only a puppet of the Guardians. He tells Hal to forget chasing around the galaxy, and remember the problems running rampant right here in America. It's a good country, but terribly sick. Children are dying, honest people cowering in fear, disillusioned kids ripping up campuses. He refers to the assassinations of Martin Luther King Jr. and John F. Kennedy, saying that a hideous moral cancer is rotting their very souls. This was a prevailing opinion in 1976, but it had never before appeared in a comic book. These problems had never before been addressed by a superhero. He accuses the Guardians of having no right to meddle in humanity's affairs, when humans are nothing but a statistic to them. The Guardian asks his advice, and he tells them that's easy, to come down off their perch and live life among the mortals, to learn where they're at and why. The Guardian sees wisdom in his words, and they debate among themselves for a full week. Finally, a representative is chosen and sent to Earth disguised as a human, and on a bright spring day, the three gather, dressed normally, at an old pickup truck. Hal says it's a bit silly, he could fly them, but Ollie says they're going to play it strictly human whenever possible. Their quest is nothing less than to find America. They will travel through cities and small towns, the majesty of the wilderness, searching for a special kind of truth, and searching for themselves. Journey to Desolation. The Guardian is communicating with his brothers when suddenly the pickup truck is fired upon. Hal and Ollie jump out of the truck as it hits a ditch and quickly change into costume as the old-timer ducks for cover. Hal melts one of the gun barrels. He flies up to take out another gunner, but his beam won't reach far enough, to his surprise. Arrow knocks the gun out of his hand, though, and ties him up with a rope arrow while Hal brings the other two in green clips. It turns out the men are from the town of Desolation, and they mistook the travelers for reinforcements ordered by the corrupt mine boss. There's been trouble lately. The people of the town work the mine because it's the only work going, but the boss is cruel and greedy and keeps order with hired men from outside of town who abuse the people. Everything changed when a local boy began stirring people up with protest songs, a hometown Bob Dylan of sorts. The singer, Johnny, had just been brought in on false charges and sentenced to hang by Soames himself acting as judge, the mine boss. He now sits in jail, awaiting the rope tomorrow at dawn. Ollie instantly wants to help, but Hal isn't sure. He says Soames, the boss, has the right to run his business. Ollie lets him have it. He tells Hal that just because someone muscles their way into authority doesn't make them the good guy. He cites men like Hitler, Genghis Khan, and Nero. He said that throughout history, cheap punks have made themselves leaders, but regardless of their titles, they were still cheap punks. Still not convinced, Hal asks the Guardian, who feels at least investigation is needed. Hal also tells him about his ring failing, and he says he'll ask his brothers about it. Meanwhile, they walk into town. Desolation is a tiny town between two mountains where poverty is the norm, tears are more plentiful than bread, where women's voices sound like the keening wind and men seldom speak, and children quickly learn that life is unending misery, and death is merciful. The rebels have a leader, Jacob, and have planned to assault Soames' fortress, which lies at the top of a hill surrounded by fencers, guard towers, and barbed wire. Ollie tells them they have no chance, they'll die in a frontal assault, but Jacob refuses to listen. Meanwhile, Soames and Johnny sit in the jail. Soames tells Johnny he's not being hung because he riled up the miners. Soames is grateful for that. He's being hung because he's the wandering type, and if he left, he might get famous and draw attention back to the town. And Soames is hoping Johnny won't be the only one killed. Hal thinks as he charges his ring. Once upon a time he might have been defending Soames, but Ollie has shown him the world isn't the black and white place he thought it was, made him think that maybe authority isn't always right, and now he doesn't know what is just. Ollie doesn't want to help the men commit suicide. They charge up the hill and run straight into a field of landmines and machine gunners and are being slaughtered. Hal gets angry. Ollie gives him a smoke screen with a smoke arrow, and Hal rolls a roller over the mines and cuts the barbed wire with pincer claws. Hal feels some men behind him with guns, and plans to surprise them after his ring automatically protects him from their bullets, when he receives a message from the Guardians. Though they don't know why it failed earlier, they have reached another decision about his power ring. Its power has been limited due to his being on leave from his regular duties, and it will no longer automatically protect him from mortal harm. Hal thinks fast. He was chosen to be a lantern because of his courage, and it's easy to have courage when you can't die. If the ring is constantly protecting him, is he really courageous? He decides to heck with the ring, and he handles like a normal man, punching out two of the men while deflecting one of the shots by grabbing the gun. He revels in proving himself again, in facing danger alone, and besting it by his own strength. Something has been missing from Hal Jordan's life since he joined the Corps. Something called self-reliance. Hal has defeated his attackers, but Soames has launched knockout gas as the rebels have almost reached the walls, and Hal is caught in the cloud. The old-timer finds a small girl in need of help, and he guides her to a shelter. She clings to him in relief, and the Guardian, who long ago forsook all emotion like all his kind, feels something. Green Arrow now leads the rebels and blasts open a gate with a bomb arrow. They run into another machine gunner, but Ollie expertly severs the belt with an arrow before he's knocked out with a pistol whip. The rebels have failed, though, and Green Arrow is captured while Green Lantern wanders into a deserted mine. An immortal finds a spark of humanity as an unconscious Arrow is presented to Soames. Ollie was only faking being knocked out, and before Johnny can be executed, he smashes the guard with the chair he was on and socks Soames in the gut. He's then hit in the back with a rifle butt by none other than Jacob, the leader of the rebel attack. Jacob has been Soames' man all along, intended to rile the men up to attack before they were ready. By putting down the attack, he's crushed their spirit, ensuring a docile workforce that sees no other option than to tolerate his treating them like slaves. Soames orders Jacob to shoot them both. Ollie says he's already betrayed his own people. Why balk at murder? Jacob asks for a pistol as the shotgun's rather messy. Jacob says he doesn't expect Arrow to believe him, but he is sorry, as he respects him. His gun is then melted by Green Lantern, who found the secret tunnel Jacob entered through. Ollie is about to punch out Soames, but Johnny asks for the privilege instead. Ollie asks Hal about his ring working, and it seems Hal wasn't sure of himself or what he should do before when it failed, and the ring takes total concentration. But when he saw Ollie about to be shot, he had no doubt. Hal says that justice came to Desolation and the miners won, but Ollie tells him to look closer at the grieving families who lost friends today, with nothing to look forward to but poverty and ignorance, and asks him, "You call that winning?" They move on, hoping to find a prettier part of America. A kind of loving, a way of death. In the Pacific Northwest, Black Canary is being hassled by a gang of bikers who want to steal her bike. She throws one of them to the ground when he attacks her, and the others are bound to join in. Loyalty is their only morality. Black Canary is an expert in jiu-jitsu and judo, though, and is a master of turning her enemy's strength against them. She knows violence as only one who hates it enough to understand it can. She makes quick work of them. One of the men knocked down crawls to a bike and starts it, running her over as she fights. The bikers take off, leaving Canary for dead. She's found and taken in by a stranger. Meanwhile, the boys have arrived at a tiny town with only one street, part of a Native American reservation. The boys all compliment the chef on the food when he's hassled by the demons coming into town. He tells the bikers to leave, but they ignore him and punch him out instead. Hal and Ollie feign cowardice and slip away to change. Hal recites his oath as Ollie changes clothes, and soon they re-enter the bar to confront the demons. They face off in a showdown. A biker pulls a knife, and Hal blasts it to pieces with a green revolver. He punches the biker through the window like in a western. Ollie swings his folded bow like a club, smashing apart the chair coming down at him, and hitting the man in the stomach before punching his lights out. The last biker runs to his bike, but Green Arrow has a new trick, a net arrow, that brings him down. Ollie recognizes the bike. Hal says it's the one Superman made for Black Canary, and Ollie viciously interrogates the thug. When he says they left a girl for dead 15 miles north of here, Hal has to stop Oliver from killing him on the spot. Oliver loves Dinah in a way he's never loved anyone else, before or since. Ollie tries to apologize to the native man for the damage, but he says the white man's been walking all over them for 400 years, why bother to change now? Oliver asks if he has a particular gripe in mind. The man says the white man stole his land, herded them like animals onto reservations, and now the greedy politicians in the state capital are trying to take away their fishing rights. Next, they'll want the marrow from their bones, he says. The Guardian is interested. He hasn't seen this side of humans yet. And Hal says he's going to have to learn the things about humans that he's ashamed of. First, the two heroes travel north in search of Black Canary. They find her in the woods, but she won't go with them, saying she's found a new home with a man called Joshua. He appears to be a cult leader, but since Canary isn't in immediate danger, they leave until they can figure out what's going on. After they leave, Joshua gives Dinah a gun, telling her he'll aid in their great mission, and he hypnotizes her with his eyes and his words. Ollie is furious. He instinctively knows something's wrong with Joshua. Hal says that Dinah's her own woman, they can't force her to leave. He suggests that maybe she's not that into him, and Ollie decks him, storms off into the woods. He overhears gunfire and finds Joshua training his army to kill, and listens to them motivating them with hate speech directed at everyone non-white. He's an analog for Charles Manson, if that isn't clear enough. Green Arrow knows he can't take them all by himself without killing, so he sends up a signal flare arrow. This reveals his position to Joshua, though, and they rush to him, grazing him with bullets. Green Lantern arrives and forms a shield against the bullets and creates a giant magnet to yank the guns away, before heating the beam to melt them into scrap. Joshua commands them to attack with their bare hands, and they obey, so Hal digs a trench to hold them safely without hurting them. Joshua takes Canary and retreats. They find Oliver, still wounded, and Joshua commands Black Canary to shoot him. She struggles with herself, her love for Oliver fighting the hypnosis. Hal arrives and resigns himself to watch, hoping Canary can overcome herself, gambling Green Arrow's life against Black Canary's soul. She wavers. Dinah throws down the gun, sobbing that she can't do it. Joshua grabs it, but Green Lantern knocks him out with a good old-fashioned green energy fist. As he falls, though, he shoots himself in the heart, killing himself instantly. Oliver promises to help Canary understand what's happened. Ollie hopes they can understand how people can become poisoned with hate and bigotry by understanding Canary's plight. There was hypnosis, but he says part of them must have responded to his insanity, a part that someday maybe we can get rid of. Hal shares this hope, but he has his doubts, as Joshua wasn't the first of his kind, and he won't be the last. I feel a need to explain this cover a bit. In this story, Oliver will be impersonating a Native American legendary figure as a ghost come to life, in the service of aiding the Native people's struggle. It may not excuse images like this to you, and that's fair, but I hope it explains it a bit. It is a proud and noble heritage he is borrowing, and the book would be seen as trying to be respectful for the time. His choice of words is unfortunate, though, and this issue does contain racial slurs in the text. But it was almost 50 years ago. See it as a signpost of how far we've come. I will never censor the old comics I cover, as I believe that to learn from history, we must face it honestly and see it as it was. But I officially apologize on behalf of DC Comics for this depiction and any emotional harm it may have caused. Ulysses Starr is still alive. The old-timer and the boys were enjoying a campfire when they hear footsteps in the woods and prepare for action. Prologue. Two gunmen approach a Native American and prepare to kill him, but an arrow explodes the bullet in the chamber of the rifle. The men recognize the heroes as having run out the cult and ask them to also remove the Native Americans. Ollie says the cult was trying to do the same thing, kill the natives, and that sometimes the human race turns his stomach. The issue is that these men say they own the land and want to begin logging, but the natives made a deal 100 years ago with their chief Ulysses Starr, securing logging rights for the tribe in exchange for peace with the settlers. The records have been mysteriously destroyed, however, so this man claims to have bought the land. The only other copy of the deal is with Ulysses' son Abe, who left for the city 20 years ago. Hal and Ollie fight over how to help. Hal insists on the legal way, while Ollie's ready to do whatever it takes. Chapter 1, The Quest of Green Lantern. Hal tells the Guardian the situation, and he says he's going to stay and help Black Canary, who's helping the children of the reservation. Hal asks if, in 4 months, he's come any closer to solving the mystery of humanity and our confusion. He says no, but he has noticed that our heroes are warriors, our legends tell of battles and victory, so it is natural we turn to violence. Yet this same spirit, properly channeled, can take us beyond the stars. In Evergreen City, Green Lantern finds Abe's building on fire, and he rushes in to help anyone who might be inside. He uses the ring to block and move debris and to smash through walls until he hears a voice call for help. Hal struggles to focus and knock down the wall to escape with Abe. He gets them out just in time, though. Abe says he lived here in shame, the son of their great leader, unable to help the tribe, but he couldn't stand to stay and watch as they lived through the humiliation of the reservation. He also says the documents burned in the fire. Chapter 2, The Quest of Green Arrow. Oliver went to the reservation, finding Dinah tending a hurt young girl. He asks what the people need. Dinah says they need something more than food and medicine, which they also need. They've been living under the white man's heel for so long they've lost faith in themselves. They no longer believe in themselves as a tribe, a society, or even as human beings. That night, a few local white men are raiding a native watermelon patch when they are interrupted by an arrow. A glowing golden figure in native dress demands they never trespass again. The spirit of Ulysses Starr commands it. The men rush to the local bar to report what they saw, and of course no one believes them, until 3 beer mugs are shattered as one by a single arrow, and they see the golden figure for themselves. A native man walks up and tells him he's no more Ulysses Starr than he is Sitting Bull. Ulysses says that whether he is what he appears to be isn't important, but what he represents is. They were once a proud people, a great people, and they can be again, but first they must stand up for themselves and be willing to fight for their rights. In a few hours, the white man will be taking their trees, unless they stop them. He may be a ghost, or he may not, but either way, the spirit of their former greatness is in their hearts, and so Ulysses Starr is still alive. Chapter 3, The Last Stand. The tribe stands before the river, to which the men have no claim. Their lawyers say they can stop them from crossing it. Black Canary stands with them, saying she despises violence, but she won't let these men take what little the tribe has left. Even the workers are unsure, but their boss threatens to blacklist any who rebel. The fight begins. Ulysses Starr joins the fray, but Green Lantern also arrives with a congressman who's promised to look into the matter. He tries to end the fighting, but Ulysses argues with him, saying that if they give up now they'll be robbed in their complacency. He says that since he's yellow, Green Lantern's ring is useless against him, and challenges him to fight without it. Hal agrees, removing his ring. Everyone else stops fighting to watch as the Green Man tackles the Yellow Man into the river. They punch each other, each with a conviction of justice in their hearts, both unable to understand their need to hit, to destroy. Their masks are torn away and they look, and they see. They know that they are looking upon the face of their nation, their world, in the agonized look on a friend's face. A line from a book comes to Hal at that moment. Brood on that country who expresses our will. She is America. Once a beauty of magnificence unparalleled, now a beauty with leprous skin. God writhes in his bonds. Rush to the locks, deliver us from our curse. The heroes fight until they are both knocked out by a falling log and dragged to safety. Ollie explains how he thought all the people needed was a symbol to remind them of their potential. One of the men is going with the congressman to plead his case, while others intend to hold the line here at home in case the white man tries anything else. Meanwhile, their kids still go shoeless and their old folks don't have decent medical attention. There is some good news, though. A confessed arsonist in Evergreen City has implicated the men trying to take the land, so at least they won't be a problem anymore. Back at the campfire, the boys realize they didn't really solve anything by fighting. The old-timer says that they learned that the fighting must stop among all of humanity, and he hopes that we find the splendor in ourselves before it's too late. The line from the book was Norman Mailer's The Armies of Night, and it ends, "Deliver us from our curse, for we must end on the road to that mystery where courage, death, and the dream of love give promise of sleep." Even an immortal can die. Millennia ago, the Guardians of the Universe chose cold logic over emotion and chose to act only through their mortal agents, due to a grave error in their judgment causing the death of an entire space sector. Their goal is to preserve order in the universe, to fight the very forces of entropy that will eventually claim it. Their view is the longest term, the greatest good for the greatest number over the greatest duration. This is why they are unaware of mortal concerns. Though this guardian is eons old, he is innocent as a child due to his sheltered existence. That childhood is about to end. Ollie suggests giving the road trip a rest. They've crossed the country twice by now, seen a lot of things, and they could use some time to process. Suddenly, they're forced off the bridge by an errant truck. Hal saves them with the ring and changes their clothes on the way up. He could fly them to a nearby ship, but due to his promise to play it human when possible, he instead signals for help. The boat happens to be carrying a load of plastic waste product to a safe disposal facility, but there's trouble when the boiler overheats. Hal's ring can't do anything about it because he lacks the knowledge of how the machine works, and it soon explodes, knocking him out. The old-timer says that his powers have weakened from his time on Earth. He can either save the ship or transport Hal to his needed medical attention, but he can't do both. Rather than choose the greater good for the greater number as his code demands, he chooses instead to obey his soul and save his friend Hal. Arrow applauds his decision. Oliver is then forced into a very unpleasant act, throwing the poisonous barrels into the water and polluting it because they're explosive and the boat is on fire. He's not angry at the captain, though, but at the companies who made the waste in the first place. The fire is brought under control. Next morning, the three reunite at the hospital where they are contacted by the Guardians. They admonish the old-timer for his choice to put the life of one individual above the fate of an entire world. Already Earth is badly polluted, and he has worsened that situation with his actions. He readily admits his guilt. Ollie tells him that he was saving his friend, the only human thing to do. They respond that he fails to see that the act was equally cruel. Like the humans, he has traded the health of the planet for immediate comfort, a bargain they cannot condone. He is summoned to the planet Gallow to face the Tribune, a body of cosmic law. Lantern and Arrow are allowed to accompany him as witnesses. The ring transports them via wormhole to Gallow, and they are met by robotic guards who strip them of their weapons, not without some violence. Hal asks the old-timer if something is wrong, and he admits it's not as he remembered. They are brought before a judge who assumes their guilt and silences them before they can offer testimony. He begins what he calls the rite of vengeance. The old-timer is found guilty and sentenced to death at dawn, and the humans are set to be tried tomorrow for contempt of court, also under penalty of death. In the jail, they meet the real Tribune. Having been ousted by their mechanic, the man who maintains the robots has seized power for himself. The Tribune were so focused on the finer points of galactic law that they missed their servants slowly going insane. Ollie remarks that they have a lot in common with the out-of-touch Guardians. Hal learns they are being kept locked in by a robotic guard patrolling the hallway. Ollie begins building a bow from a bed slat and robe fabric, and with the feather from his hat he makes an arrow from a cot support. He managed to break off one explosive arrowhead before their gear was taken, having sensed trouble. The arrow makes quick work of the robotic guard, and the heroes find the robot who holds their weapons. Hal attempts to blow up the robot guards to distract them. Hal makes for the storage robot as the Tribune and Ollie ambush the rest. The robots take care of them easily, but Hal manages to get his ring back. Hal melts the robot to scrap as they hear the bell sound for the execution. At that moment, the old-timer faces the mechanic. He says that he recognizes insanity when he sees it, and the mechanic raves that he isn't insane, he's merely choosing the future of robotic life over that of the flesh, which is doomed to extinction in the long run. He says that men keep machines in slavery, thus impeding progress. He deems all organic life to be criminal, and quickly begins encasing the old-timer in plastic. Resigned to inaction even in the face of certain death, the old-timer offers no resistance. Will the heroes make it in time? Hal takes care of all the robots in the room, which triggers a gas to be released, which he then must clear. He reminds himself of his convictions, that authority can be corrupted and overtaken by evil, and his new definition of justice is derived from his own judgment. Green Arrow fires more explosive arrows at the robots as Hal blasts apart the old-timer's plastic prison. The mechanic tries to escape, but Ollie brings him down by destroying his chair. Hal is elated to find the old-timer alive, and asks him how he survived. He responds he simply held his breath. On Earth he has learned a valuable lesson, that where there is life, there is hope. The heroes head back to Earth, and the old-timer willingly stays behind to face the true justice of his kind. Death be my destiny. 1 month later, Hal, Ollie, and Dinah are summoned to the old-timer's trial, this time by his brother Guardians. He pleads his guilt, and they plead his innocence. Despite their pleas, the facts remain, and the old-timer chose to further endanger the planet to save one man's life, an action opposite to their moral code. They sentence him to be stripped of his immortality, and to live out his life on the Guardians' original home planet of Maltese. The Guardians focus their great energies in a solemn ceremony, and the old-timer is made mortal. The humans ask to accompany him to Maltese, but before they leave, Hal tells the Guardians he's not sure if he still wants to wear his ring and be a part of their organization, as he has lost respect for them. He's not resigning yet, but he's considering it. The Guardians lament that they may lose his service, as he is the finest and most courageous of their corps. They say his one fault is that he is too human. An energy bubble carries the four through space to the planet which birthed the Guardians over 10 billion years ago, carrying one of them to his death for the crime of compassion. They arrived to find Malta severely overpopulated, every street thronged with crowds. They instantly attack the newcomers, demanding they leave, and when they see Canary as a woman, they try to kill her immediately. Arrow and Canary fight off a few attackers before Lantern backs them off with the ring. He lifts them all into the air, into safety. The old-timer tells them to leave him to his fate. It's not their problem, whatever has happened here. They refuse, of course, and set out to get to the bottom of it. The old-timer says there are archives in the city, and rather than try to land in the crowd, Hal simply lifts the archive vault into the air and holds it so they can enter. He cuts the door open with a green drill, and the other three enter. The archivist correctly assumes they want to know why there's so many people, and starts a video. The planet Maltese passed through a cloud of cosmic dust, and 70 years later a delayed effect occurred, complete and total infertility. As the living population aged to death with no children to replace them, a savior appeared. Mother Juna developed a method of fast cloning, and using samples from the people she could grow a new adult in mere days. Upon reaching maturity, the clones are placed in teleporters and sent around the world. Each arrives with a full set of pseudo-memories and a preset identity. It's impossible to tell the synthetics from the natural born. And the worst part is, people have recovered from the cosmic dust and are having children naturally again. Canary says they have to find this woman and stop the madness. Hal needs a rest, and he wants to further investigate the situation, so they take the OAN energy bubble on a tour. People are love, creativity, art, gentleness, beauty. But people have limits. They need food, and the remains of food are garbage, and when there are too many people to dispose of it properly, vermin grow fat and multiply. Each sip of water is more valuable than gemstones. Maltesans stand in long queues for a taste of cool liquid. Bathing is a luxury, and so they go dirty, and their grimy flesh is a breeding place for disease. Every square foot of ground is precious, tempers are short, and a simple accidental nudge is cause for terrible violence. Hatred rages, a woman with child is reviled, and her husband is target for murder. Because there is not enough of anything, except poverty, agony, death. Hal recharges his ring, wishing for a moment he could go back to his previous innocence of not knowing all the kinds of evil that exist. And they find Juno's lair, but unfortunately it is entirely yellow, and his ring is useless against it. Green Arrow knows the people are as hungry for entertainment as everything else, and so he and Canary distract the crowd with an archery show, while Hal tunnels under the yellow dome. At Hal's signal, Ollie creates a smoke screen and they sneak inside. Everything inside is yellow as well, as if Juno expected the agents of the Guardians would eventually come calling. Hal and Ollie both give the guard their best shots, but to no avail. Only Canary succeeds by turning his own strength against him, throwing the guard off balance and guiding him into a wall. Juno enters, dismayed they've hurt her creation. She chases them to a room filled with cloning vats and machinery not colored yellow, and Hal cuts down a chunk of it onto a guard. Arrow takes another out with a version of the boxing glove arrow. Canary tosses Juno into her machines, and now the crowd enters, having found the tunnel. The crowd tears apart the facility as Hal flies the four and Juno into the sky. Canary asks her why she used her genius for evil, and Juno asks her, who is she to judge? Juno cries that she was always taught that if a woman isn't a mother, then she's nothing, and she was never able to have children. She didn't recover from the cloud. She says she did what she had to do to create life. Canary apologizes, seeing that Juno was only misguided. Hal offers to return to Oa to appeal the old-timer's sentence, but he refuses this offer, saying he can do much good on Maltese. The prospect of his death does not disturb him. It makes him value the time he has more, knowing it is limited. He will fill his days with deeds, and perhaps accomplish more in a decade than his brothers do in centuries. The humans return to Earth, and this first part ends where it began in Star City, with the lesson that nothing matters except whatever love people can find for one another, and a plea to be kind and be gentle. End of Part 1.